cocktails are actually very terroir based, meaning they were created in the way they were for very specific reasons. For example, the margarita uses tequila and lime because that's what's common there. So when you're trying to make drinks at home or in any other place, look for what's around you rather than trying to force yourself to stick to a very specific recipe. So we've got much better lemons in New Zealand than limes. They're cheaper, they're juicier. So just use those, you know? You don't have to stick to this very strict recipe.
Welcome to the Bountifull Podcast, where we explore what it means to live a bountiful life. Today, we are embarking on an exciting journey into the world of mixology. If you've been following me for a while now, you know that I drop a new cocktail recipe every Friday over on Instagram for you to try at home. I'm delighted to be here in the studio with the super talented and knowledgeable Egor Petrov, who I've known since I was 13. He's founder of Bayside Rum company and my favorite bartender. Egor, welcome to the Bountifull Podcast. It's a privilege to have you on the show today. Here in not so central Auckland, at your rum factory something like that. So how are you today?
Good, thanks. Yeah, it's been a good start to the year.
And what are you doing today?
I've just been putting down a few more molasses mashes, which is how rum starts to be created. It's when the yeast do their job and eat the sugars and create alcohol.
And what goes into rum, molasses?
So molasses is the traditional raw ingredient of producing rum, because back in the day, sugarcane spirits and alcoholic beverages in general have been made for thousands of years. Sugarcane itself comes from Southeast Asia, so southern India mostly. And I'm sure they would have, back in the day, juiced it and let it ferment and just drink that as a form of beer, I guess, before distillation reached them. But as the New World was discovered and sugarcane was brought over to that side, that's when sugar itself became the highest traded commodity in the world. And so they wanted it to last, so they've created the technology of drying it out and crystallizing the sugar. But the process of crystallizing it created a byproduct, which is the molasses. You crystallize it through heating it up. And so there's this basically boiled up syrup that's left over, and that's the molasses. It's actually, that's the part of the sugar making process that keeps all of the nutrients and minerals and things like that. So it's healthier than sugar, a lot more flavorful. Like that's where the flavor stays. Yeah. But people that were trading sugar had no use for it. And so they just kind of left it. And people who worked at the plantations and the sugar factories would take that, make it into a beer and drink that. Okay. And eventually they got stills and started distilling it. And that's kind of where rum came from.
Not the Caribbean.
Caribbean, South America, even the USA as well. Yeah. They all grew sugarcane.
Right.
It was all over the place, but the Caribbean became kind of the epicenter of what we know as rum.
So obviously we're here today to talk about mixology secrets. You've lived in some pretty phenomenal places, making drinks for people. I think one of the things I learned from you was that there's an art and craft and like science to, I know, cocktail making, being mixologist, that goes beyond just like what people would consider like, oh, you're a bartender, you make drinks.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to get into that. You've entered lots of competitions, you're constantly creating. Obviously you have your own rum label now, which is very yummy. But first, can you tell me how you see the world?
If I was to be completely honest, I'd say it's unjust. And a lot of people have much more opportunities than most of the world. And I remind myself of that. So I feel very privileged to live in New Zealand, to call myself a Kiwi. And I always remind myself of the opportunities every single person that lives here has compared to people that don't.
Yeah. And then how do you see yourself?
I see myself as ever growing and ever evolving. I don't think we should ever stop being curious in life and in the world. And, you know, some people express that through travel, some through work. For me, creativity has helped me express myself a lot. And at first it was dancing. That's where, well, actually, I've always been creative as a kid as well. I would make a lot of things out of clay as a kid, but for some reason my parents didn't notice my love for doing something with my hands.
Yeah.
So that never went anywhere. But then I guess I rediscovered myself in dancing, where we met. And what kept me in dancing is probably just the creative process of it all. When that was finished, I actually had this hole in my life and in time, because when I'd usually go and practice, I'd be sitting there at home and be like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
You know, I had to fill that void, I guess. And I just happened to be out of uni, didn't know what I wanted to do. And I thought, I'll go work.
Yeah.
So my first job that I actually enjoyed was in a bar, and I kind of never looked back.
Yeah. I mean, a few things there. One, I remember we used to train for like 3 hours a day, 6 days a week when we were younger, because we were doing competitive land and ballroom dancing. And I remember we used to have like at least one day a week where we would all just like practice trying new moves and tricks, which would usually end up with most of us just like bailing on the floor because we'd like tried to do some kind of like non-lift lift and just like claps or like finger turns into some kind of weird balance. So I remember that was actually quite fun and like obviously very creative.
I enjoyed it. Also enjoyed trying out the styles, which was really cool. Especially my fondest memory was when some of the teachers from Europe came over and taught us rock and roll. That was really fun because it was a little dangerous. It was very different to what we do every day, 3 hours a day.
I remember in the like holiday workshops we used to do, the ballet ones, where that ballet teacher would make us do like bicycles for like so long. And we're like, we're dying. Our abs can't handle this. He's like, keep going.
You know what he used to say, and I actually live by this in a way now, especially recently. He used to say that pain is ice cream, and I now understand what he means in a sense that the pain you experience when you're pushing yourself is only there for as long as you push yourself. And if you know why you're doing it, then first of all, it's easier to push yourself. And if it gets too much, you can always pull back, right?
Yeah.
But you shouldn't forget that to move forward, you need to experience pain, which is eventually going to turn into ice cream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. That would be helping you get through your new running regime right now, right?
Absolutely. Running stopped me a lot. Like I've been running for a year now, once a week. And I've made a point of not running in good weather only. It doesn't matter. So I decide that, on Friday, I'm going to go for a run. And if it's pissing down with rain, I'm going to go for a run. Because it taught me that life goes on. And if you stop only because, something's out of place, it's almost like you're looking for an excuse to not do what you should be doing rather than it actually being an obstacle, Yeah.
I wonder if there's a lesson in that too, where you're like, well, if you don't live when the weather's bad or whatnot, like you're kind of missing life in a way.
Absolutely.
You're excusing yourself from life for that day just because it's not like how you want the world to be on that particular day.
Or how the society expects the world to be, right? We're kind of taught that, you go for a swim or you go to the beach when the weather is good. But that's not necessarily the case. I run in Long Bay, so I run along the beach and then to the hills. And it's beautiful every time. It doesn't matter what the weather is.
Yeah.
And if you appreciate it for what it is, then every day is a little bit better that way, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you to have a bountiful life?
I think Bountifull life is about fulfillment. So I've been thinking a lot. You know, you look at people my age with 5 houses and this and that, and then you find out that half of that was they didn't necessarily earn it themselves, right? So that's where they fall into the trap of finding other ways of being fulfilled, and that's usually drugs and alcohol. You know what I mean? You see that a lot with young movie stars, right? Because they've kind of reached this point where they've achieved what the society says should be achieved, and then the rest is empty. I am fulfilled because on my recent run, there's 2 ways I can go at my last elevation. And I usually take the normal one. And then I asked myself, why do I do that? And then I realized that I dread the other one because it's a little harder. I was like, well, that's actually the one I should take.
Yeah.
Because I know I can do it. I just prefer to take the easier route, it seems. But if I take the harder route and achieve it, then I'll be more fulfilled for doing that.
You get the ice cream.
Yeah, I get the ice cream. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think you should chase fulfillment, and then life will be bountiful.
Yeah, I like that. And what advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
To find a mentor, somebody that has your best intentions at mind, and it shouldn't be a transactional relationship. It should be somebody that's there for you for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And I think I've had people like that in my life, but I've never wanted to have a mentor. I thought the more I make shit up, the more unique I'll be, which I guess is in a way true, but maybe somebody could have stirred me towards the right decisions a bit earlier, which I'm only discovering now.
I got a mentor when I was around 25 or 26, and it was groundbreaking. Like, we had like a monthly catch up. Often he would ask me to write down my thoughts on a whole bunch of stuff and then send them over so he could see how I was thinking about life. And I was living in San Francisco at this time, and was just starting to, like, my career was taking off, and I found it a little bit overwhelming. And I was being asked to do all of these types of things that really freaked me out, like, you know, public speaking or leading workshops or those sorts of things. He kind of gave me a roadmap for how to do those things and how to sort of appear my best, or like tips and tricks. And that was really, really helpful for me to kind of have someone outside of my sphere and not my family that I could go to bounce ideas off, and also to like give me a leg up that I didn't necessarily have. I experienced quite a lot of ageism in my early career, particularly in New Zealand, because we, back then, a while ago, kind of had this view of like, young people can't be managers, or you're too young to do this and that and this. And so I left New Zealand for that reason. It's like in San Francisco, no one cared how old you were. They were like, are you good at what you do? Are you a nice person? Are you hungry and driven? Like, sweet.
Yeah.
Like, your age is completely irrelevant as long as you like deliver and do what you say you will, which was like,
and we hear
cool.
about those people, right? Like even Bill Gates and the rest of those big boys. They were successful very young, but it seems like maybe they couldn't have achieved that if they were, for example, here.
I think so. Yeah. Even my stepson now, he's already an assistant manager, and they wouldn't give him the next job, but they were like, you're too young. And he was like, oh, okay, well, that's disappointing. Because it's like, I can do the job. Exactly. So like that one reason, like, tell me about your background. So obviously you started working in bars, and then, you know, what happened from there?
That was, I guess, the first thing I enjoyed. And I thought, what would be the coolest or the best job in hospitality? And to me, at that point, when I first started, it seems like the general manager of a 5-star hotel. And so I started applying to every single hotel around the world. In New Zealand, not in New Zealand, didn't matter. I applied in Switzerland, in UK. I think I applied to the Buckingham Palace, thinking it was a hotel. And they actually sent me this incredible letter as saying, we're sorry, but no. But I emailed them like twice being like, hey guys, is there any response? Even a no would be nice. And they did the email back being like, oh, actually, we're allowed to take up to a month and a half to reply. So please, be patient. And then the letter arrived like a couple of days later, actually. And it was so beautiful. And it was like the best quality paper. And it was almost handwritten in this incredible ink. And I was like, wow, this is nice.
Thank you for rejecting me so nicely.
Yeah. But then a job came up in Melbourne. And so I moved there to pre-open the Hilton South Wharf. Really enjoyed the first 3 months of the pre-opening process. It was fun. We did lots of activities because I ended up in concierge.
Yep.
And then when sort of the daily grind hit, it wasn't necessarily the job itself, but it was the company structure that I didn't gel with. I felt like a number.
Yeah.
It was so corporate that they went super by the book. Like one example was when we were parking and delivering cars, I took a bunch of keys with me so I didn't have to go to the desk to get them. And then it was like, 6 a.m. So I was still sleepy. So I forgot a few keys in one of the cars. And then that got discovered a couple of hours later. The chief concierge was like, oh my God, we're missing these keys. What are we going to do? And then I was like, maybe they're in a car. And he was like, oh, well, maybe, yeah. I remembered that I might have forgot them in the car. So I went and got them. And I was like, here they are. He's like, oh, thank God you found them. That's so good. It's a shame we won't find out who did this. And I was like, oh, it was me. I forgot them. I trusted him completely, and I said, well, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Whatever. I fixed it, right? And half an hour later, he comes back and he's like, yeah, that's going to be a written warning. Like, what? Why? He's like, well, because you didn't follow protocol. And then I was like, well, I will never trust you again.
Yeah.
Why would you, this was the first mistake I made. I fixed it straight away and nobody got hurt. No problem whatsoever. And they still made the point of, going as far as HR. And I thought, this could have stayed between us and you could have said, like, mate, this would have been a written warning.
Yeah.
But because you fixed it, and then he would have had my trust.
Yeah.
And I would have been even more interested in helping him. I decided that hotel was enough for me. So I moved on, came back to New Zealand, met this girl. So I thought I'd stay. Got into finally a job that I enjoyed in a bar where everybody was all about growing and there was lots of learning. And I really enjoyed that. Every week there was a training of some sort. So the culture was great and they treated you like a person, which was really important. And then I met this Russian oligarch called Michael that bought BioWare. And we kind of got along. So he asked me to work for him. I did that and realized that he knows how to run business in a Russian way, which doesn't work in the Western world.
Right.
I wouldn't be paid for like 3 months at a time. And it was really hard. So eventually I thought, you know what, this is never going to go anywhere because he was kind of like, he wanted it to just naturally, organically become this multi-million-dollar business without putting any effort into it. And I started looking again as what I can do.
Yeah.
So I applied all over the world again. And then I reached out to my friend in Dubai who was running a consultancy agency or a consultancy. And I was like, is there anything going? I don't mind, bartending. He's like, oh, you know what? Not at the moment, not at your level, but I'll let you know. And I forgot about it.
Yeah.
So I was just looking for something outside of New Zealand to go and kind of change the scene. And then 2 months later, he's like, oh, mate, I'm opening this place. They need a bar manager. Why don't you come over and why don't you interview?
Yeah.
And I just did. And I got the job. And a month later, I was in Dubai. So that was an adventure in itself. I've pre-opened 4 places there, worked at the World's tallest building. It was, really interesting time until COVID, which is when I decided to come back.
Yeah. Get married, have a kid, and start a rum business.
That's right. Yeah. Matilda was born in Dubai, which was interesting.
Yeah.
But she was a really big driving factor to come home because of how unsuitable Dubai, I think, is for kids.
Yeah.
And it gave me the opportunity to finally realize my dream of starting my own brand, which in this case is Bayside Rum Company.
And if you were to describe your Dubai experience in 3 words, what would those words be?
Overwhelming. It was an adventure. And it was consuming.
No pun intended. What made you fall in love with mixology and when did it happen?
When did it happen? Oh, right. It's when I worked at Linen in the Viaduct. And we had this operations manager for that company who was super into cocktails. And he started training us every now and then. And so I thought, oh, cool, there's a bit more to it. And there's so much I don't know. Yeah. And then he took me to Sky City where he just finished working, but his menu was still on. And we tasted half of the menu. And he described to me how he came to those recipes. And it was from a recent trip to Thailand and where he tried a bunch of incredible food and how flavors that he never thought would matched. Right. And he took, for example, the tom yum soup. And because, soup, the medium is the broth. But in a cocktail, the medium is the alcohol. Yeah. So essentially, you take things that will work in the cocktail format. Like you don't want the shrimp in there. Sometimes you do, like in a Bloody Mary, but it depends on what you're making. In this case, he made, a sour, like a margarita style drink, but adding those Thai flavors to it. And I was like, that's so cool. That was incredible. I was blown away. Yeah. And so from then on, I kind of started just binging on cocktail books. Yeah.
And what 3 essential characteristics would define your approach to mixology or making cocktails?
Curiosity. Definitely basing things on classics. That's essential for a good quality balanced cocktail. Staying curious is a great idea, and looking out into nature for sure.
I like that. So you take like a classic, like a margarita, and then you put a twist on it. So you might be like, I want to do passion fruit, or I want to do watermelon, and so you keep the like base recipe, and then just like slightly tweak the flavors to get something
basically
fresh.
Yeah. But you can, instead of having just tequila, you can infuse that with something from your garden. Cocktails are actually very terroir based, meaning they were created in the way they were for very specific reasons. For example, the margarita uses tequila and lime because that's what's common there. So when you're trying to make drinks at home or in any other place, look for what's around you rather than trying to force yourself stick to a very specific recipe. So we've got much better lemons in New Zealand than limes. They're cheaper, they're juicier. So just use those, you don't have to stick to this very strict recipe.
I deplore the watery margarita. Yuck. And someone once put sparkling water in my margarita. I was like, no. Like, if I'm paying $20 for that, like, I don't want water in it. Like, gross. And so when I kind of started getting into cocktails, I had I went to like a workshop or something, and the lady was like, put your ice in last, because then you won't get a watery cocktail, but then it'll get super cold. And then she went on some like super tangent about like how shaking it breaks down the molecules or something like that. And I was like, oh, that actually makes sense to me. So let's talk a little bit about your rum company. So Bayside Rum was founded in 2020 with a mission to put New Zealand-made pure single rum on the map. Can you tell us the story behind the creation and what inspired you to venture into a rum production?
Actually, back in the day, I'd say 10 years ago, I would keep telling people like, oh my God, it'd be so cool if we had the gin of Auckland, and I would call it like Goa. And we just go and pick these botanicals that grow in Auckland. There's so many that are so common, like fennel is everywhere and rosemary is everywhere, lavender. And so citrus, in everybody's garden. So we could have really created a interesting product that spoke of where we come from 10 years ago. And nobody believed in me. And I was like, maybe this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
And look at gin now, it blew up. And so when that started happening to gin, I was like, you know what? I need to stop listening to other people and what advice they have on my ideas. And maybe I should just go execute. And working in Dubai, I was earning pretty good money and I was saving half of my salary. So I saved up a bit by the time COVID hit. And I thought, you know what? I'm either going to burn through this now by just sitting here and kind of looking for the next gig, or I can go home and do something of my own. And because gin was done, I decided that I need to get into something that maybe is going to be the next big thing.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a big factor, because ultimately this is a business and you have to
make money.
That's right. And rum's still got a long way to come, but New Zealand's rum industry is so little. I thought there was a great opportunity to start something really special that represented this country, because we do have beautiful nature out here. We've got great culture, great people, and I wanted the brand to really represent that and to take it around the world and to kind of showcase what not just, my ideas are about, but what this place is about.
Yeah. What aspects of rum in particular captivated you? Like, what are some of the characteristics that you really enjoy about the spirit?
So I've been fermenting with probiotic bacteria quite a bit for the last 4 years now, and I got pretty good, and I realized how much I enjoy fermentation. But in things like whiskey and wine and, making brandy, it's all pretty strict. You've got to use these the specific equipment, the specific cultured yeast to achieve specific results.
Yeah.
While with rum, it's all about getting all of that airborne bacteria to infect the mash and to get what we call as the funk. Yeah. What you open kimchi and it goes, it's that bacteria working in there. And rum is all about that.
Right.
So I thought, that's so cool. I can literally continue my fermentation experiments through the rum washes and then make something really cool out of it as well, to distill the essence of that.
Can you tell me about a time in life that wasn't so bountiful and how you overcame it? Sorry.
Coming back home was really hard, actually. The last couple of years have been super tough because I started Bayside, and while it's been a great adventure, it's also been the most challenging thing I've ever done. And we've had our daughter in Dubai. She was 2 by the time we came back. So being sleep deprived, it really affects your relationship with your partner. And as I've realized, I'm an alcoholic. All of that sort of came together and made me really depressed. I was not feeling great.
Yeah.
But what I call is the elephant in the room. It was the one thing I wasn't addressing. It was my drinking. And so now looking back at it, that was definitely the least bountiful time in my life.
Yeah.
As I said in the beginning, I am all about staying curious and growing. And last year was a year of massive growth. And I'm so happy to be actually feeling so fulfilled and bountiful now. So yeah, after every rain, there is sunshine.
Yeah.
So you have to look at it that way.
So I have to ask, because people are going to wonder, and I don't mean to be insensitive, obviously deeply empathetic, but so you're a mixologist at one of Auckland's top restaurants, and also you have a rum company, but you don't drink anymore.
That's
so
right.
How does that work for you?
A lot of it is sensory. Obviously, with cocktails, I've been in the industry for 14 years, and I kind of know it by the back of my hand. The recipes, when we create them, I can tell you what it's going to taste like because I've already tried the majority of combinations. And when I see younger bartenders put flavors together, I know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then we pre-batch them for the speed of service, which, is of benefit to us as well as the guest because you don't have to wait 20 minutes for your drink.
Yeah.
We do pre-batch them, and then it's a matter of pouring the right amount.
Yeah.
And what I would suggest to anyone that's starting out in cocktails is you have to measure everything.
Yeah.
And that way you'll achieve greater balance.
I got this beaker from Briscoe's, and it's got up to about 100 or 200 mils on it or something, and it's super cool. And ever since I started using that, because using the jigger when you're starting out, you're like, how much is 2 ounces? I have no idea. And in New Zealand, we use the metric system, the mils. And so I found it easier to start using the beaker, and it made me way faster, and also just helped me sort of remember and be faster at making drinks.
Yeah, great idea. And you don't have to seek out specific equipment. I remember visiting my friends in London, and we were at their place, and we just shook cocktails in Tupperware.
Yep.
Because we just wanted cocktails. So the quality of your cocktail is the sum of its ingredients, right? So good ice, good quality spirits, and fresh produce is really what it takes together with balance to create a good cocktail. So just take an old jar and start with that.
Yep, that's what you need. So we're going to do the quick fire round. What, in your opinion, is the most underrated fruit or vegetable?
I don't know if it's underrated, but I love basil. I think it's the best. It's the king of herbs, as they say.
Oof.
Favorite.
Controversial. So do you have a vegetable garden?
We do, yeah. We have one at home, but my wife mostly tends to.
And what are you growing there?
Lots of tomatoes, a bit of strawberry. We've got some sunflowers, courgettes, cucumber, peppers.
Do you like to cook?
I do like to cook. I have a very specific way I like cooking as well. I prefer cooking on charcoal, and I do that at least once a week. There's something about starting a fire and getting those coals really hot and ready. And then we get a nice piece of grass-fed steak, and I grab whatever vegetables there are in the fridge that I know will probably be either lost to time or just won't be used. And then all of that goes on the grill. And it makes for a really delicious dinner.
And what's your favorite cocktail?
A sour, like a daiquiri style, because it's such a simple recipe. And you take your favorite spirits. You're in New Zealand, so you use honey. And then you take your fresh lemons. And then you can muddle any herb or any fruit into it and change it instantly into whatever the season brings.
Yeah, love that. Worst meal that your parents made you eat?
Oh, it was this type of porridge that I absolutely hated as a kid. And it was clumpy and...
Yeah, I'm not a porridge fan. Sorry for the porridge lovers. Most spontaneous thing you've ever done?
I think moving to Dubai was pretty spontaneous.
Yeah. And a hell of a good time.
And actually, I mean, starting Bayside isn't necessarily spontaneous, but it is that kind of... It wasn't spontaneous, kind of I'm doing this, and that was that.
Wow, it's a big deal to start a business, I think, as well, and hard. And what word would you say describes your life?
What word describes my life? I like the word curious right now.
And last question is, what's the dream for you moving forward?
The dream for this year is to be financially independent.
Egor, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Bountifull Podcast. Your passion for mixology, rum, and the hospitality industry is inspiring. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience with our audience. And we're looking forward to sipping more of your creations and following your journey with Bayside Rum Co. Cheers to the Art of Mixology and Bountifull and the bountiful experiences it brings. And for our audience, I will put all of the links to Egor's life in the show notes. And if you found today's episode inspiring and engaging, don't forget to follow and subscribe for more engaging conversations. Our season is brimming with extraordinary guests from diverse backgrounds, and I can't wait to share all of these conversations with you and much more. Here's Bountifull Living. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.